Hi everyone, I'm Coral. Welcome back to my channel. I'm here today with my wrap up with what I read in February. But first, I'd like to take a moment to talk about someone very special in my family who we lost recently. We had her memorial service this weekend. This is Zach's Grammy, and she was just such a special person. And I've been thinking about like what is the best way to describe her, and I think special really just encapsulates it very well. She was generous and she had a big heart. I think she liked to see the best in everyone. She liked to talk about people's achievements, and she welcomed me into her family. I mean, the first time I met her, she brought me into her kitchen, and she had this just like big, huge shelf, like built-in, beautiful shelf full of just cookbooks. And she's like, make sure you write your name in one and you can have it when I die. It was like the first time I met her. She was just so kind, and I want to talk about her here just because she was somebody who really loved books, and she became a teacher. She taught first grade for a while, and then her and her husband, who I will call Grampy, he was Grampy, he passed away a few years ago. They built a house, and in the first, it's like up on a hill, right? So really like the main floor of the house is kind of like the second floor, like the second floor, and then there was a schoolhouse on the first floor. And she taught in her own home, which is where she lived until she died, and that's the house that I got to know Grammy in. And I just think that the impact in my life, the impact that she had in my life was really minuscule compared to a lot of the other people in her life. And she was a very important part of her community, and she saw, like I said, she saw the best in people. She helped a lot of people. Like sometimes we'd go over there and there was just like people staying with her, you know, people who needed a place to stay. And I don't know, she's just such a really lovely person. So she loved music and cooking. She loved musicals. She was a reader, and I'm really sad that she's gone. And I just, like I said, I wanted to talk about her today a little bit because it's just kind of been weighing on my heart this weekend. And she was just a person who really loved things like reading. So I wanted to tell you guys about her. I think, gosh, if I could just model my life after hers. She was just a really good person. Grampy too. Grampy was a good person too. He was very smart, and I think she was smart too. And I think that's probably why my husband and all of his sisters are all very smart and successful, is because they came from such a great family. They had good genes. And also they worked hard, obviously, but so yeah, that's a Grammy. She was really great. And now I'm gonna try to stop eye-watering because I want to tell you about some books that I read this month. Okay, so moving forward, thank you for letting me gush a little bit and be sat on camera for a minute. Let's see here. This month in total, I ended up reading 11 books. Out of these 11 books, 6 of them were books that I owned previous to this year. That's what I count as my like TBR. So 6 of them were books off my TBR. One was a book that I reread, so like I don't count that as a new book, but also I've already read it, so I don't really count it as like my TBR. And then 2 also came from the library. In total, I read 3,487 pages, which is about 124 pages per day. I had a goal at the beginning of the year to read 40,000 pages, hopefully, and so of that, I now have 31,178 pages to read. The genres I read this month were mostly horror. I read 1 fantasy, 1 nonfiction, 1 science fiction, and 8 horror books. The years these were published, Let's see, the oldest one was published in 1969, which actually really surprised me. After reading that book, I wasn't sure when it came out, and I looked it up and I was like, that's much older than it read like, you know what I mean? The next oldest came out in 1995. Then I had a 2002 book, and then I jumped all the way to 2020. I had 3 books that were written in 2020, 3 books that were written in 2021, and 2 that were, well, one's an ARC, so it's not out yet, and then the other one was a new release. So I'll tell you all about these. As far as series go, I'm just kind of trying to track that and make sure that I'm not picking up series and then just letting them like move to the back of my mind and be forgotten about. So one book is in a series that I will continue reading, and one book is the start of a series, and I just don't feel compelled to pick up the second book. Like, I'll get to it, but it came to a conclusion and it felt like the story is done, and I think I'm just gonna leave it there. Age range for these, the audience age range, I have read 2 that would probably be considered YA and 9 adult books. One of these was an ebook, 3 were audiobooks, and 7 were physical copies. I read 9 novels and 2 novellas. So now we can get into this. I really should do the books that I don't have physically in front of me so I don't forget about them, because I'm really bad about that. So let's see. First, I'm going to tell you, oh my gosh, sorry, I'm getting a lot of texts about Grammy's house right now. She, like I said, she had a lot of stuff. She had a lot of stuff, and Zach's sister is up there right now, one of his sisters, and she's grabbed a couple things for me, which is just, I don't know, Zach's family is just so great. Oh, I'm having an emotional day today. I'm sorry. Okay, so the first book I'd like to tell you about, because it's not in front of me, and like I said, I'm afraid I will forget about it if I don't talk about it immediately. That is Dead Stars, which is an anthology edited by John F.D. Taff. Let me look up the release date for this. So this comes out next month, March, on the 22nd, and like I said, this is an anthology. It's not an anthology that really has a theme. So there were lots of different stories on there, a big variety. I felt similarly to how I feel about most anthologies. There were a couple really great stories and a couple that I was just like, I don't know why I'm here for this. And I have to admit, I kind of skimmed through a couple of them. So my favorites though, if you pick this up, my favorites were All the Things He Called Memories by Stephen Graham Jones. Then I also loved Mrs. Addison's Nest by Josh Malerman and The Attentionist by Callan Kapnis. So, not much to say about it. Those stories were my favorites. Mrs. Addison's Nest is about like a teacher that might be not human, and then the Stephen Graham Jones story was about like a husband and a wife during quarantine, and the wife starts to play kind of like a psychological game on her husband, and it goes wrong. And The Attentionist is a story about 2 teenage sisters, and those were my favorite stories. The next one I'd like to tell you about, because it's not right in front of me, is Cultish by Amanda Montell. This is a nonfiction book. This is about the language that cults and cult-like organizations use, and how they use language to like ensnare people or make them feel like they're part of a bigger picture. And it was really interesting. They talk about different things that we might consider a cult, whether it's like a religious cult, a exercise cult. They talk about like yoga and CrossFit. They talk about MLMs, which is a topic that's super interesting to me. You know, just things like that. I don't know, it was really interesting. I listened to this one on audio and it was good. It was really interesting. Okay, and then the last one that I listened to on audio this month was The Andromeda Strain by Michael Crichton. This was a buddy read, and I listened to this on audio, but I found out that there are some diagrams and stuff in this So like I might have to go pick up a print copy just so I can like, well, I really like to have a print copy of books that I've read, but just so I can see. And I really, thinking about it, I probably should have guessed because I read Jurassic Park last year, and that had graphs and diagrams and things like that, it wasn't like super necessary to see that stuff, but it really did add to reading the story, you know what I mean? And this is a science fiction story. This came out in 1969, so this is the book I was talking about where I read through it, and then I looked at the date and I was like, wow, this is not quite as dry as I would expect, or it was more relevant than I would expect something from 1969 being, especially because in this book we're talking about space germs that hitch a ride on a satellite that was in space that comes crashing down to Earth, and the small town it lands in, everyone dies, and the mechanism of death is really hard for the scientists studying this to figure out. And of course they want to make sure that they get this done quickly because they don't know if this is able to, because obviously it's spread throughout this small town. There are 2 survivors. Everyone else is dead. So they know that whatever it is able to infect people who are not directly like touching the thing, you know, and things like that. They know it can contaminate, I guess, large areas or larger areas. And so yeah, it's really a short and sweet book, very science heavy. So if you really love science, I think that this would be a great book for you. I liked this. I can't say it's my favorite book ever, but I really enjoyed listening to this, and the science was really believable. And I'm not a scientist, so this is just like me with my layman's knowledge thinking, oh, this makes sense, but also like sometimes CSI makes sense, and I know that's totally made up. So yeah, of course, I don't know, I'm just saying it was good, especially if you like real life science stuff. Okay, now on to the physical books that I have here in front of me, and I can pick them up and I can show you. The first one here is A Lesson in Vengeance by Victoria Lee. This is a young adult book, came out in 2021, and this is really more of like a gothic horror mystery, kind of. I will tell you more about this in my trope video coming out in April, which is going to be about dark academia books and or really like horror that happens in a school setting. This definitely is dark academia. I'm just not sure if all of them will be, and I'll tell you more about this then. Another quickie. This is Such a Pretty Smile by Kristi DeMeester. I filmed a review for this. I haven't I have not edited this yet, but I will probably after I do this wrap-up video. So the review's not out yet, but it will be. So I'm just gonna tell you, I really love this book. This is a horror book. This came out at the very end of January, so this was a 2022 book, and I really liked it. I liked it a lot. Then we have The Between by Tananarive Due. This was published in 1995, and this is another horror book. This one definitely reads a little slower. It's more dreamlike, and I think that really lends itself well to the plot, because the plot is a lot about this man, Hilton, and the dreams that he's having. So Hilton, he is a grown man, he is married, he has a well-established career, he has children, and, you know, seemingly his life should be going very well, but he is haunted by these dreams that all seem to stem from a childhood trauma where he was drowning and his grandmother, who he lived with, swam out to save him and drowned in the process of saving him. So he made it back okay, but unfortunately his grandma did not. She died, and he has these dreams around his birthday, and they get really, really bad, and he's used therapy to kind of help that. But now, right now in this story, the dreams have come back and they're worse than ever, and he's having a really hard time figuring out what is really a dream and what is happening in his real life. And you know, it's leading to some really terrible things. And also, while this is going on, his wife, who has a successful law career is being targeted by a man she put in prison. And so, you know, there is that as well. So it's really a really slow creeping book that gets to a really, really intense climax. And there was a part where, you know, we figure out maybe why Hilton is having these dreams. And I remember I was sitting in here and I was reading and I got goosebumps over my entire body, and it was like, oh my God, I have to keep reading this. It's just so very intense. And I loved the characters in this. They just felt so real and authentic, and it was really a good book. I'm glad that I picked this up. This is my first Tananarive Due book, and I'm definitely going to be picking up her other books. She is really she has a way with words. Next on my list was The Deep by Alma Katsu. This was my 5-star read for the month. And it wasn't quite a 5-star read, unfortunately. This is almost like a retelling or a reimagining of what happened on the Titanic, what caused the Titanic to crash. But really more than that, it's a mystery surrounding a woman who worked on the Titanic and like some stuff that's happened in her history. And I don't know, I feel like I can't really give a better synopsis than that when I think about like what really went on, because I wouldn't like to give anything away. But we follow a couple different characters in this, but the main story really does revolve around Annie, who worked on the Titanic, and now she's working on the Britannia, I believe it's called, which is like a sister ship of the Titanic, but it's not a passenger ship, it's like a floating hospital, which is interesting. I'd like to know more about that, if that's really a thing that we did. And yeah, she's very drawn to another passenger she met. Well, I shouldn't say another passenger, because she was not a passenger, but he was. And I don't know, it's just this whole story. And, you know, this just felt very, very slow. This story took its time. And I can't say that I really loved when we kind of figure out the mystery of why Annie feels drawn to this person, and like the mystery behind Annie's past and things like that. Not that it was bad, it was just a little bit underwhelming for reading so much and having some build up, you know what I mean? And for so long, because this is a big boy. It's like 500 pages or something, right? Oh no, not quite. Only 400, but it just, it wasn't bad. Like, I wasn't like, man, I shouldn't have read this, or like, I didn't feel like I should DNF it at any point, but it was just very long. Okay, then I have the 2 novellas that I read this month. This first one here is Shadow Vista by Charles Colyott and Mark Steensland. This I read for my readathon, the My Bloody Valentine readathon, which I will be hosting again next year, I hope. I shouldn't say for sure, because I don't know what next February will be like, but I'm really hoping to do that. This is about a serial killer who is killing people and hiding their bodies in a housing development that's still being developed, so there's a lot of construction going on. And I thought this was just okay. It felt very rudimentary, and not in a bad way. It just, you know, didn't take a lot of processing. The dialogue wasn't anything crazy. The action scenes weren't anything crazy. The mystery wasn't anything crazy. It was just fun. Okay, next up is Benny Rose the Cannibal King by Hailey Piper. This is part of the Rewind or Die series, and this was another shorty that I read for my readathon. This is the second time I've read Hailey Piper, and I don't know if I love her writing. Well, it's not her writing, because I think her writing's okay, but I just find myself kind of feeling bored in her writing, and I really don't like, I said this when I was talking about this in the vlog for my readathon that I ended up doing, but I really hate reading something by an indie author, especially an indie author who is part of other marginalized groups, because like, I don't want to give anyone the excuse that they need, you know what I mean, to like skip over an author like Hailey Piper, because that's just shitty. And I don't want to like give excuses for people to be shitty. Like I'm not trying to be shitty. I don't know if I like her writing, and I would like to try one more time. I do think that the third time's the charm when it comes to trying out authors. The first book I kind of just chalked up to not loving the themes in it. This one, it's about like an urban legend of this man called Benny Rose who was, what was he doing? He was like eating children, and then he burned down the hospital when like the townsfolk found out about it, and now years later everyone knows that you don't go into the neighborhood where Benny Rose died on Halloween because like Benny Rose might be there, and it's really just an urban legend until like it's not. And I thought this would be up my alley, and it just ended up not being, unfortunately. But I really would like ask if you are interested in this, please don't let my review stop you from picking this up, because I think none of my reviews should stop you from picking anything up. Please don't let my reviews stop you from picking up books that you might love, because it's just my opinion, of course. And like I said, I would like to try out another one of her books just to make sure, you know? All right, then I read Near the Bone by Christina Henry, which I did really like. This was the fourth book that I read for my my Bloody Valentine readathon, and this is about a woman named Maddie, and she lives on a mountain in seclusion with her husband William, and William's like not a very nice dude, and we come to find out why he's not. So Maddie, she's up there and she finds the corpse of a fox one day, and it's just like been killed and left there, which is not a normal thing. You know what I mean? Like if another animal killed it, it would eat it. It wouldn't just kill it and leave it, right? So she sees that, and then all these other things start happening with this creature in this woods, and these people from outside, like civilization, come to look for this creature too, and William is very upset about it. And so this is kind of like survival-y, creature horror-y. I really loved the unraveling mystery of why Maddie was with William, because you know what, they just don't seem like a match made in heaven, that's for sure. And yeah, what this creature is and stuff like that. I really enjoyed it. I will say that there did come to a point where it was like ramping up and ramping up and ramping up, and then it kind of like started to peter down a little bit, like my interest in like the tension and stuff. But then of course it did build back up again. So I don't know. I mean, it kind of lulled, but some books do that. I still really liked this though. Then the last book I'd like to tell you about is one that I've reread a few times now. This is Eragon by Christopher Paolini, and I've read this probably 4 or 5 times, I think, this by now. And I'd really like to reread the series again. I was thinking about it because the person who showed me this book was my friend Carly, and unfortunately she died. It's been 8 years now. Which is just a whole can of worms I shouldn't open up because I'm already feeling really sad. But she gave me this book. We were like doing one of those school computer tests, and I forgot something to read, and she's like, here, I've already read this, you can read it. And I fell in love with this book, and it just gave me a really good way to escape the situation I was in, my living situation, which I really hated at the time. And yeah, I grew to really love the series. I know it's not perfect. There are so many like very obviously borrowed ideas from other great works of literature, and it's like he didn't even try to make it like, to disguise it. He just like flat out was like Eragon? There's just so many things like that, you know, where and you know, you can call it an appreciation, you can call it an appropriation, I don't know. I guess I don't really have an opinion on it, but I am also biased because I really like the series, and I can't say it's well crafted, and I can't say that it doesn't borrow a lot of ideas, but it holds a lot of nostalgia for me. So, you know, I was thinking about my friend Carly, and I was, you know, thinking about this series, and I wanted to read it again. So I'm going to be doing that over the next couple months on audio. That's how I read this one this time. And the audiobook was pretty good. I mean, it's not, the narrator isn't like super spectacular, but better than average, I'd say. And that's it. That's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me talk about Grammy, who is just a very generous, kind, big-hearted person. And thank you for listening to, I don't know, all the other shit I have to talk about. Of course, I'd love to know if you've read any of these and what you thought about them, but that's all. So that's it. And I will be going now. Thank you. Goodbye.